what do people that don't understand the investment world know about, what's a good salary, what's not a good salary?
Man, I feel like there's a very toxic culture around this, and maybe I'm not the right guy to ask, but I'll just tell you what I know. So at least in the context of due diligence, it's a little bit different from the typical answer to this. I think the typical answer to this, someone will tell you, is I think the typical finance path looks something like you go and you get a business degree, an MBA or finance undergrad, what have you, and then you go try to apply to every investment bank you can. You get a job working as an investment banker. You do like 70 or 80-hour weeks for 2 years. I'll never forget that. Someone told me if I wanted to work in traditional venture, that I should go work at an investment bank for 2 years to have more conventional experience on my resume and then come back. It was a pretty funny thing.
Interesting.
In any event, that work can be pretty lucrative. My understanding is it pays something like 150 to 300K at most, like as far as being an investment banker at a place that most ordinary people would be able to get into if you weren't at like the top elite school, but it's still hard to get in.
Okay, so let me just clarify that for the listener. So there's 150 to 2K, quite a big gap, but that's because there's like commissions and bonuses built in there.
Yeah, so at least as I understand investment banking, and that can mean different things depending on who you talk to. It's not that different, but in general, these terms all sound a lot more complicated than they are. An investment banker's job, generally speaking, is somebody comes to you and says, hey, Sonic, I want to sell my business. Well, that's easy. Let's go talk to everybody we know that wants to buy a business and see if they want to buy your business.
Okay.
Right? That's the job. Now,
Gotcha.
The reason that it's such a ton of work is because the buyer is something fancy called a private equity firm. And what that really means, or usually it's a private equity firm, I guess I should say, not always, but for the sake of simplicity. The buyer is somebody who says, I make money by buying a business and then improving the business in some way, or just owning it. Maybe it's a mature business and it does whatever it needs to do. Now, the reason the private equity guy does this game, the private equity guy says, all right, I see this business, and to keep the math simple, let's say it's a business that pays or that generates $1 million of free cash flow per year, right? Just like after all the expenses, everything, taxes, whatever, you get $1 million on the other side. Beautiful. So then I'll buy that business maybe for like 5 million. Now, instead of buying it for 5 million in cash, I'll go to a bank. So I'll take maybe I'll put 20% down. It's just like a house. You can put 20% down. A bank gives you a loan for the rest. They call this leverage. It's a fancy word for basically saying, all right, I'm getting access to more money than I actually have. Maybe I bring $1 million. I buy this business for 5 million. It generates 1 million in free cash flow every year. Great. So if a bank lets me buy this business, and there's all kinds of fun terms you can negotiate here, but at the end of the day, the whole idea is, let's say now I take this normal business and maybe I'm able to automate some stuff